I'm sure if you play online games, there's always been this one little train of thought in the back of your mind about what would happen if the publisher just turns off the servers for your favorite online game. What happens to all of your progression, all this time and effort that you've put into that game? Where does it really go when things go offline? And it's something that perhaps all of us kind of push it even further down into the back of our minds, ignoring it because we live in the moment. We just want to play the game. We're not really thinking about servers shutting down, right? But it has happened. I'm sure many of us have always looked back at old accounts and old games and wondered, why can't I go back and just, continue where I left off? Well, there's been a recent survey conducted by the Stop Killing Games consumer advocacy group that sheds light on a troubling trend in the gaming industry, the fate of online-only games. According to the survey, a staggering 70% of games with online requirements either have already become unplayable or are at risk of disappearing when official server support is discontinued. The issue has sparked concerns among players who are left with games that often become entirely inaccessible once the publisher ceases their support. The survey includes over 738 games, and of these, 299 are already considered dead, meaning they are no longer playable due to the termination of their official servers. An additional 313 games are at risk as well, with no clear plans for continued support, leaving their future uncertain. This situation is particularly frustrating for fans that depend on online features, including those that may have offline modes but still require online connectivity for key elements like multiplayer. The issue is compounded by a lack of transparency even from publishers. They don't kind of set up a roadmap for this stuff. They just one day say, hey, we're just shutting it down. Bye-bye, And many companies are reluctant to make clear statements about whether a game will be preserved once it moves past its active phase. In some cases, games are said to support some private servers, which in theory could allow continued play, but often require publisher oversight or actions because what would happen is, cheaters would come in and flood it with all sorts of mods, and it just becomes an uncontrollable mess. Good example, World at War on the PlayStation 3. It's a nightmare. This lack of clarity has created a frustrating situation where gamers are left wondering whether their investment will last. All this time and effort, achievements, progression, cosmetics, and items, and where does it all go? Can I continue using it? And I do recall that one of the aspects of offline games, the only way I've seen preservation is through the community itself, not from the publisher. That's the most ironic part. You find communities building up, separate private servers on the side and basically trying to run it. And it's not particularly legal, but it's in a gray area, you could say. What matters is that people get to play those games, those legacy games, and keep that player base lively. I look at things like Killzone 2, Lord of the Rings, Battle for Middle-earth 2, and so many more out there. It's always the community that has to step in to help preserve online games more than the publishers. The server even highlights that the broader issue with the live service model has become popular in recent years. Live service games, which often rely on ongoing updates, active online components, face a challenge when publishers decide to discontinue support. Just when their player base dwindles enough, they're going to shut the game. It's just how it is. While these games can be lucrative during their active phase, they become unsustainable and unplayable once the official infrastructure is pulled, and this creates a cycle where consumers are left with games that may be playable only as long as the publisher is willing to maintain their servers. And moreover, the underlying financial motivation of large publishers are a key part of this problem. As long as they're maximizing profits, right, and they're making some sort of money flow, then the servers are going to be there. But if it's not, it's game over. And it's this profit-driven model that honestly causes, I would say, such a rupture, such a disruption to the online gaming experience, you know? As long as publishers are able to make some kind of money, as long as they can justify keeping those servers up, then they will keep doing it. But if not, it's kind of game over. And with live services, it's very fickle. You know, it's almost like season by season. Every 3 months, you know, if you know the money and time and content they put in doesn't warrant support from the publisher, they just shut it down. It's such a very competitive and very, you know, intensely tight kind of maneuver, you know, and it causes this thing where a lot of multiplayer games in a saturated market find themselves, you know, they roll it out for a year, and if it just doesn't bring in the player base, they shut it down. Some of them don't even last a year. It becomes this thing where it's almost common knowledge with gamers when they see a new live service come out and they see the trailer and maybe it has some familiar aspects to something that's more popular. I read this always in the comments or in the forums. They're like, yeah, this is not even gonna last 6 months. It's gonna shut down. And here's another thing, online only features, or even games with single player games with online features. This is the most ridiculous tactic. I point my fingers on Ubisoft for doing this. You know, they do it on the Assassin's Creed. Imagine you're playing a single player game and you have to pay for boosters just to speed up the grindiness of a single player game. How crazy is that? Is that good design, bad design, or is it just complete monetization coming out of the publisher? It's ironic, you know. I mean, I read this server, 70% of games, 70% of online only games are doomed from the get-go, and that's a shame, you know. And publishers will not put the effort to preserve and provide support because it doesn't benefit them in the long run. It won't, and it will always be the community, the modders, who are going to step in and actually have to clean up this mess. And that's unfortunate. There could be solutions, but if it doesn't benefit the publishers, then there's no reason they should even implement it to begin with. But you share your thoughts and opinions. Do let me know. Text me at 4215. It's Lother Do. Love to hear your opinions. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more news and highlights from the world of entertainment right here on the Evening Buzz.